The stars flickered in the vast emptiness of space, silent and cold. Ships drifted among them, some large, some small, but none dared linger too long. Fear had a name in this part of the galaxy, the dragon. It was a creature spoken of in whispers, a living storm that had ended entire civilizations. Its scales shone like molten metal, its eyes burned like suns, and its roar could shatter worlds. No weapons, no fleets, no alliance had ever survived it. It was the end of everything. Among the scattered stars, a small human ship drifted alone. It was tiny compared to the alien fleets, almost fragile, with its hull scratched and dented from minor skirmishes. Inside, a dozen humans worked quietly. Most were tired, some scared, and a few tried to ignore the endless reports of alien warnings about the approaching danger. But there was one who noticed nothing, Elia Voss, a small human child of 7 with messy hair and curious eyes. She wandered the corridors, her tiny feet making soft sounds on the metal floor. She was alone because her parents had been busy organizing the ship's defenses, but Elia did not care. The world outside seemed distant and abstract, more like a story than reality. Outside the ship, sensors screamed in alien languages. A massive shadow moved, blotting out distant stars. It was impossible to see its full size, for it seemed bigger than the imagination could hold. Alien commanders hissed and bickered in panic. Target confirmed, one shrieked, but no one pressed fire. Every scanner, every calculation suggested that nothing alive could survive the dragon. Their weapons were laughable. Their strategies irrelevant. The only question was how quickly their civilization would vanish. The dragon's massive wings cut through space like dark blades. It did not hesitate. It did not show curiosity or malice. It simply moved with purpose. When it approached the human ship, the aliens braced for the usual destruction. The flash of energy, the collapse of matter, the screams of those trapped. But something strange happened. The dragon slowed. Its enormous head tilted as though sensing something in the small vessel. Alien observers froze, stunned and uncertain. They had never seen a hesitation. Their fear turned into confusion. Was this an error in judgment, a flaw in the universe? No. It was deliberate. Inside the ship, Elia explored the storage deck, her small hands brushing against crates and containers. She had never seen anything so big and strange before, and she did not feel fear. Her curiosity outweighed every warning she had ever been given. Then she heard it, a sound so low it vibrated the metal walls, so deep it seemed to come from the floor itself. She paused, her small body tense but not terrified. The sound grew louder, closer, until the air itself seemed to tremble. And then she saw it. The dragon's eye filled the corridor. It was enormous, golden, and ancient. Its scales reflected every light in the room, but they also absorbed it like darkness made solid. Its gaze was not angry, not cruel, it was assessing. Elia took a small step forward. She did not run. She did not scream. She only looked, her tiny face curious and brave. Alien analysts on distant observation decks held their breath. This should have been the end of the human ship. Every simulation predicted annihilation. Yet the dragon simply paused. Time seemed to stretch. Every being watching from a distance felt it, the slow, deliberate stillness of a creature that had never stopped for anyone. The ship's alarms blared as systems struggled to make sense of this anomaly. Lights flickered. Communications failed. Nothing mattered except the child and the dragon, standing in the same corridor, separated by space and scale but connected in a moment that felt eternal. Elia raised a small hand, trembling slightly, and reached toward the dragon's eye. She did not know why she did it. She only knew she wanted to touch, to understand, to see. The dragon lowered its massive head. Alien sensors reported impossible readings. Energies that should have destroyed the ship were still there but strangely calm. The air shimmered as if reality itself had paused. The observers could not believe what they saw. They shouted orders, demanded explanations, but no answer existed. Science and fear collided in confusion. The dragon's ancient mind seemed to recognize something it had not seen for eons. A tiny human, fragile and soft, unarmed and unimportant in every calculation, carried a presence that made the deadliest being in the universe hesitate. Elia's hand touched the dragon's snout. She felt heat but not destructive fire. She felt life, immense and eternal. The dragon sniffed, its enormous nostrils flaring. It did not recoil. It did not attack. It merely watched the child with an intensity that made every observer feel small, insignificant, and unprepared. In that moment, the legend of the dragon as the universe's destroyer seemed incomplete. Perhaps it had been more than a weapon. Perhaps it had been a guardian once, long ago, before fear and war had twisted it. And perhaps, just perhaps, a small human child could remind it of that truth. The alien fleets panicked. Some ships fired, desperate to test the dragon, but their weapons fizzled uselessly in its presence. The dragon did not retaliate. It only lowered its massive head until its golden eye was level with Alia's small face. For the first time in countless millennia, a being feared across galaxies showed hesitation, curiosity, and recognition. Alia looked up into the eye and smiled. It was not fear, not arrogance, but a simple human smile. A bridge across impossible scales, a spark in the dark, a signal to the universe that life could be brave in ways no weapon could measure. The corridor was quiet again, save for the soft hiss of the dragon's breath. Alien monitors flickered, trying to process the impossible. Ships drifted, unsure whether to attack or flee. But the child did not move. She only stared, reaching out with a small hand, touching the dragon's face, feeling the scales, feeling the warmth, feeling the life inside the legend. Outside, stars shone as they always had, indifferent to fear. But inside that tiny ship, in that single corridor, something new had begun. Something the universe had never seen. The first moment of trust between humanity and the deadliest creature known. The dragon slowly, carefully nudged the small human. It was not a strike, not an attack. It was recognition. Alien commanders screamed and cursed, but their words fell flat. The child and the dragon existed in a moment beyond their understanding. Every calculation failed. Every prediction crumbled. And somewhere deep in the dragon's mind, memories flickered, memories of protection, of kindness, of a time before destruction. The universe had seen death. It had seen fire. But it had not yet seen what humanity could do. Alia's small hand remained on the dragon's snout, trembling, tiny, and alive. The dragon's immense head lowered further, and the golden eye softened. In that quiet, suspended instant, fear did not win. Death did not claim victory. The human child, tiny and fragile, had survived, and the dragon, enormous and unstoppable, had stopped. Somewhere in the cold void of space, the impossible was happening. The universe was holding its breath, waiting for what would come next. The corridor was quiet after the first contact, but the air still hummed with tension. Alia's small hand rested on the dragon's snout, and the beast's massive eye followed her every movement. It was alive in a way no machine could measure. Outside the ship, alien fleets paused, unsure how to react. Every system, every sensor, every mind tried to process what they were seeing, but nothing fit the old rules. A human child, tiny, fragile, and completely unarmed, stood face to face with the deadliest creature in the universe. And the dragon did not strike. Alia, unaware of the chaos surrounding her, stepped back and blinked up at the massive head. Its scales shimmered like molten metal, and its warm breath ruffled her hair. She reached out again, brushing a finger along its golden ridge. The dragon lowered its head a little more, tilting as if to inspect her. It made a low rumble in its throat, almost a sound of curiosity. For the first time, the dragon seemed calm rather than destructive. The child's small life, simple and brave, had stopped what no fleet, no weapon, no army had ever managed. Alien command ships above drifted in stunned silence. High-ranking officers could not believe their sensors. "It is not attacking," one of them said in disbelief. "This is impossible. It has never paused for any life form." Another shook its head, muttering orders that had no meaning. Their weapons remained dormant. The dragon's presence was too vast, too powerful, too alien. And yet, one small human moved among it like she belonged there. Inside the ship, the adults began to notice something unusual. Engineers and pilots watched as Alia approached the dragon, unafraid. Panic flickered in their eyes, but no one intervened. She was a child, yes, but there was a force in her actions that seemed to affect the dragon. Her courage was tiny, but it carried weight heavier than any battleship. The dragon's immense head followed her, tilting slightly as she stepped closer to its front claws. Its scales reflected the dim lights of the corridor, creating a strange, glowing pattern across the walls. Alia wandered carefully, observing the dragon. She noticed its claws first, enormous and sharp, capable of tearing the strongest metal. But they were still. The dragon did not move aggressively. Then she noticed its wings, folded and massive, spanning more than the length of her tiny ship. Even so, they trembled slightly as if sensing her presence. Finally, she looked into its eyes again. They were deep, golden, and old beyond imagining. And yet, in those eyes, she saw not anger but awareness, like the dragon could understand her small existence. The alien fleets outside remained frozen, unable to act. Their thoughts raced. Could one human, one small life form, really influence the deadliest being alive? The fleet commanders barked orders demanding weapons be fired, but the systems refused to comply. It was as if the dragon itself rejected their attacks. Energy weapons fizzled in the air. Missiles froze mid-flight. Every attempt to provoke the dragon failed. And inside, the child moved freely, unaware of the storm she had created outside. Elia's steps took her toward the dragon's massive neck. She touched a scale near its shoulder, and it shimmered under her fingers. The dragon lowered its head even more, a rumble vibrating through the ship's hull. She smiled slightly, feeling warmth, life, and intelligence radiating from the creature. This was not a machine. This was not a weapon. This was something alive, ancient, and powerful, and it responded to her tiny presence in a way that no one could have predicted. Suddenly, the dragon let out a sound, not a roar, not a screech, but a soft, vibrating hum. It echoed in the corridor, resonating with the ship's walls and Elia's bones. She shivered slightly but did not step back. Instead, she reached forward and placed both small hands against the creature's snout. The hum deepened. The dragon's massive eye blinked slowly, a gesture so gentle and deliberate it felt almost human. And in that instant the adults around her began to whisper, some in fear, some in awe. Something extraordinary was happening. Outside, alien commanders continued to argue. Some wanted to fire anyway. Some wanted to retreat. But no one dared move. Every sensor, every weapon, every calculation said the human should be dead. Yet she was alive. She was not just alive, she was standing her ground, facing the impossible, and the dragon was not attacking. The deadliest being in the galaxy had paused for her. Alia tilted her head as if trying to understand what the dragon wanted. She spoke softly, though no one could hear her words through the thick hull. "Hello," she said. "I'm Alia. I'm small, but I want to be your friend." Her voice was calm, steady, and tiny. But the dragon reacted. Its hum shifted, its eye softened, and it lowered itself so her hands could rest against the edge of its mouth. Alien scientists outside could not understand the readings. Energy spikes, unknown vibrations, and ancient signals filled every monitor. It was as if the dragon's mind was waking from a long, long sleep. For a long while, nothing else happened. The dragon simply stood there, allowing the child to explore its massive form. She touched its wings, felt the texture of its scales, and marveled at its warmth. There was no fire, no destruction, no threat, only a presence that was vast, terrifying, and yet curiously gentle. Alia laughed softly when a small puff of warm air brushed her hair. She did not understand how dangerous she was, or how miraculous the moment had become. She only knew she was alive, and the dragon had chosen not to hurt her. The adults finally approached cautiously. Alia stepped back, one whispered. She shook her head and held her hand against the dragon. The creature seemed to sense her protective stance, lowering its head again and letting the adults watch from a safe distance. They could feel the heat radiating from it, the raw energy of something older than any world they had ever known. Fear warred with awe in their hearts. This small child, the smallest life form aboard the ship, had done what no fleet could. She had held the attention of the deadliest dragon in the universe. And somewhere in the infinite darkness of space, alien fleets continued to hover, frozen and uncertain. They had expected death, destruction, and chaos. Instead, they saw a child standing alone, touching a massive creature, unafraid, unarmed, and alive. The impossible had occurred. The smallest life form in the galaxy had not only survived, but it had changed the moment. The dragon had stopped. The universe had paused. And Alia, tiny, human, and brave, had become the center of a story no one would ever forget. Alia stood before the dragon, small and quiet, her hands resting on its massive scales. The creature's golden eye blinked slowly, watching her with a patience that stretched across centuries. Outside the ship, alien fleets hovered like frozen stars, unable to act. They had expected fire, destruction, and screams. Instead, they witnessed a human child facing the deadliest creature in the universe, and it was calm. No one could understand why. The dragon's deep rumble filled the corridor, vibrating through the walls and under Elia's tiny feet. She tilted her head, listening. It was almost like a voice, not words but thoughts and feelings. She felt a strange warmth, a memory hidden deep inside the ancient being. And without understanding why, she moved closer, drawn by curiosity, compassion, and something that seemed older than the galaxy itself. Her small fingers brushed along the dragon's snout. It was rough, ridged, and warm. She could feel the power pulsing beneath the scales, energy that could destroy planets, energy that had ended civilizations. But it was also alive, thoughtful, and aware. Alia's heart beat quickly, but she did not step back. Instead, she closed her eyes and leaned forward. Then, softly, she pressed her lips to the dragon's snout. The universe seemed to pause. Outside, alien fleets froze in shock. The sensors went wild, unable to read what was happening. Energy spikes unlike anything they had ever measured surged from the dragon, but it did not roar. It did not attack. It trembled slightly, a deep vibration that shook the floor and walls of the ship. For the first time in its long existence, the dragon had felt something other than rage or survival. It had felt connection. Elia opened her eyes. The dragon lowered its massive head closer, as if leaning into her small gesture. Its golden eye reflected not just curiosity but recognition. It remembered something it had long forgotten. The child's simple act, the kiss, awakened a memory of being a protector rather than a destroyer. Once, long ago, before war, before fear, it had cared for other beings. It had shielded life instead of ending it. And now, a tiny human had reminded it of that truth. Alien observers panicked. "Impossible," one shouted. "It cannot respond like that to a human." Systems quivered. Calculations crashed. Energy weapons fizzled. No formula, no strategy, no logic could explain what a small child had done to the deadliest creature in the galaxy. They barked orders, demanded fire, demanded retreat, demanded answers. But nothing mattered. Outside the ship, time seemed suspended as the impossible unfolded. Alia's hands remained on the dragon's snout, trembling but steady. She smiled, unsure why the warmth made her feel both afraid and comforted. The dragon emitted a low vibration, almost a hum, that resonated through the corridor. She felt it in her chest, in her bones, in her heartbeat. The air shimmered faintly, as if reality itself recognized the moment. It was more than bravery. It was connection, the kind that no technology or weapon could ever create. The dragon's hum grew louder, vibrating through its massive body. Memories flooded its mind. Times when it had protected weaker species, times when it had flown across empty worlds to guard life instead of taking it. It remembered laughter, sunlight, rivers, and stars it had once watched over. Anger and destruction had come later, after centuries of fear and attacks, but now the human child had reminded it of who it truly was. Its enormous eyes softened, golden and warm, filled with recognition and trust. Alia's parents and the crew finally stepped closer, watching cautiously. They could feel the dragon's power even from a distance. Heat radiated, energy pulsed, but there was no threat. Only calm. Only awareness. And a strange feeling of awe. Elia, small and fragile, had done what no human, no fleet, no weapon could. She had reached the heart of a creature that had been feared for eons. The dragon slowly lowered its head further, pressing its massive snout gently against the child. Elia giggled softly, brushing her hands over its scales. The hum deepened. Outside, alien commanders froze. They had expected carnage. They had expected death. Instead, they were witnessing an act that defied every rule of war and science. A kiss, small and human, had changed the course of history. The dragon's golden eye narrowed slightly, then widened. It inhaled slowly, the sound echoing through the corridor, vibrating through the ship. Its massive body shifted, tilting slightly to allow the child better access. It was an acknowledgement. A recognition. A silent promise that it would not harm this life, this human, and perhaps even others like her. Alien fleets recorded the moment in stunned silence. No one could erase it. No one could rewrite it. The smallest life form in the galaxy had touched the largest, and the universe had stopped to witness. Elia stepped back slightly, keeping her hands on the dragon's snout. She did not know the significance. She only knew it had responded. The dragon lowered its head, bowing slightly to her presence. It was not a gesture of subservience but of understanding. It had remembered its purpose, its choice, and now, because of her, it could feel something other than rage and destruction. The crew around Elia whispered among themselves, some with fear, some with awe. They had survived the impossible. They had witnessed the impossible. The child, tiny and human, had done what their weapons could not. She had reached the heart of a being older and more powerful than any fleet, any empire, any calculation could comprehend. And she had done it with a simple human act. A kiss. Outside the ship, the alien observers finally began to murmur, their voices trembling with disbelief. "The child, one whispered. "She changed it," said another. "A human, she touched the deadliest dragon and it stopped." They recorded every movement, every vibration, every sound. But no recording could capture the feeling, the connection, the moment the dragon remembered what it meant to protect rather than destroy. Elia smiled again, stepping fully back but keeping her hands on the dragon. The creature inhaled, slowly exhaling heat that filled the corridor with warmth. It was not fire meant to burn, it was life, energy and presence. The deadliest dragon in the universe, a creature feared across galaxies, had paused. It had remembered its true nature. And it had acknowledged the human who had reminded it. In the vast emptiness of space, time seemed to hold its breath. Alien fleets, human ships, and drifting satellites all froze, watching the impossible. The kiss had broken history. A child had reached into the heart of a monster and awakened something long lost. The dragon's hum settled into a gentle rhythm, calm and steady, as if the universe itself had acknowledged the act. Elia, small and unafraid, looked up into the golden eye and whispered softly, "Hello, friend." And the dragon, ancient and terrible, rumbled back in agreement, the sound gentle, protective and alive. Somewhere in that moment, the universe began to understand that true power was not fire or weapons, but courage, trust and connection, and the smallest life form could change everything. The dragon's massive head rested near the floor, its golden eye still fixed on Elia. The child did not move, her hands gently touching the scales, feeling the life inside. Outside, alien fleets hovered in shocked silence. No one dared fire. No one dared approach. All they could do was watch as the impossible unfolded. The deadliest creature in the universe, feared across galaxies, had paused, had listened, and had responded to the smallest human life. The dragon's hum deepened, vibrating through the ship, through metal walls, and even through the nervous hearts of the adults nearby. Engineers and soldiers whispered among themselves. They had survived countless battles, faced warships with weapons that could melt planets, but nothing had prepared them for this. The smallest life form on board, a human child, was shaping the outcome of history. Then, slowly, the dragon's mind began to open. It was not in words, not in sounds humans could fully understand, but in visions, memories, and feelings. The corridor shimmered with images that only Elia could sense. She saw stars being born and dying, civilizations rising and falling, planets burning under the dragon's immense power. And yet, beneath the destruction, there were flashes of something else. Moments of protection, of care, of guardianship that the dragon had performed long ago, before the wars and the hunting had changed it. Elia tilted her head, sensing the emotions rather than understanding the details. There was sadness, yes, but also pride, courage, and hope. The dragon's hum changed, now carrying a rhythm that felt almost like speech. It told her, not with words but with meaning, that it had been twisted by centuries of fear. Every species it had destroyed had attacked first. Every civilization lost had once been a threat. And yet, in that long line of fear and violence, humans had done something different. They had touched its heart, not with weapons but with trust. Outside, alien commanders panicked. "It is communicating," one said, voice trembling. "With a human?" Another shook his head in disbelief. "Impossible. They are too small. Too fragile. They cannot influence the deadliest dragon in the universe." Yet the readings could not lie. Energy flows shifted. Ancient power, so old it had been forgotten by almost every mind in the galaxy, surged and changed direction. The human child was the cause. Elia did not know the full meaning of what she had done. She only felt the warmth, the presence, the life of the dragon. She spoke softly. "It's okay. I am your friend. You do not have to be alone." Her small voice echoed in the corridor, simple and steady. The dragon lowered its massive head further, tilting to sense her courage and honesty. Its hum became softer, gentler. It had felt hatred and fear for centuries. Now it felt something new, trust. The visions grew stronger. The dragon showed Elia flashes of its past. It had once watched over young creatures, guided lost travelers and protected fragile worlds. But fear had changed everything. Civilizations hunted it. Empires sent weapons. Its own power became a curse. And slowly, over time, it had learned to destroy first to survive. But the child, so small, so human, had reminded it that protection was possible again. That care could exist even in a universe full of fear. The crew around Elia watched, afraid to move. They could feel the dragon's presence, the energy of its thoughts, and the weight of its memories. And yet they also felt something else. Relief. The deadliest dragon, which had caused endless fear and death, was now considering a choice it had not made in centuries. It could destroy. It could flee. But it could also protect. And for the first time in living memory, humans were at the center of that choice. Elia stepped closer, placing her hands on the dragon's massive jaw. She did not speak. She only stayed still, letting the creature feel her presence. Slowly, the dragon lowered its head completely, resting its enormous weight near her. Its hum softened to a gentle vibration, filling the corridor with warmth. The child had not only survived, it had reached the heart of a being no one else could touch. Outside, alien ships began to move, slowly and cautiously. They had expected carnage, but now they saw something that defied logic. The human child had tamed the deadliest dragon not with weapons but with kindness. Some fled in fear, unsure of what this meant for the balance of power. Others tried to record and analyze, but their instruments failed to capture the truth. No amount of technology could measure the courage, innocence, and trust that the child had brought into the corridor. The dragon's mind revealed a simple truth. No species had ever approached it with care before. They had all tried to control, to attack, to use. Humans were different. They were fragile, yes, but their small gestures carried meaning beyond force. A touch, a voice, a simple act of trust could move even the most ancient being. And in that moment, the dragon understood that humans were not weak. They were powerful in ways the galaxy had forgotten. Alia's parents finally reached her, trembling but careful. They saw the dragon, immense and terrifying, and felt the heat and power radiating from it. Yet their child was safe, untouched. They realized that she had not only survived, but she had made the dragon see something it had not seen for centuries. The deadliest dragon in the universe was no longer driven only by fear. It was aware. It had remembered protection and it had acknowledged humanity. The corridor shimmered faintly as the dragon lifted its head slightly, golden eyes resting on Elia. It was an acknowledgement not of submission but of understanding. The child's courage, curiosity, and trust had awakened something older than the galaxy itself. Alien observers could not comprehend it. Military strategies, weapon calculations, and centuries of fear had all failed. One tiny human had changed the course of history simply by being brave, kind, and alive. Elia smiled faintly, not knowing the significance. She only knew the dragon felt different, warmer, calmer, and alive. The deadliest creature in the universe had remembered its true self, and the child had reminded it. Outside, fleets shifted uncertainly, some retreating, some observing, but all aware that something extraordinary had happened. Humans had done what no weapon, no strategy, no empire had ever achieved. They had touched the heart of history, awakened a being lost to time, and reminded the galaxy of a power it had forgotten. The dragon's hum settled into a steady rhythm, gentle and aware. Its golden eyes remained on Elia, filled with recognition and trust. Somewhere deep in the galaxy, observers recorded the impossible. A small human life had reminded a creature of ancient guardianship. A tiny presence had shifted the balance of fear and power. The universe had paused, watched, and learned that courage and trust could move what no force could. Elia, small and unafraid, stepped back slightly, still touching the dragon. She looked around at the adults and the alien observers, but her attention stayed on the immense being before her. The dragon's hum was calm, almost like a heartbeat. In that moment she did not need to understand everything. She only knew that she had made a difference. And the galaxy, long accustomed to fear, was starting to remember that humans were not weak. They were extraordinary in ways even the deadliest creatures could not ignore. Elia stood beside the dragon, her small hands resting lightly on its massive snout. The creature had lowered its head completely, golden eyes calm, warm, and aware. For the first time in centuries, the deadliest dragon in the universe was quiet, attentive, and unthreatened. Its hum filled the corridor like a heartbeat, steady and gentle, and every human aboard the ship could feel it vibrating through the floor, through the walls, through their own bodies. Outside, alien fleets shifted nervously. They had expected fire and destruction, and instead they were witnessing a child change the fate of history. The deadliest dragon, feared across galaxies, had chosen not to attack. Its mind, once consumed with rage and survival, now considered the impossible, protection. And it had chosen humanity. The adults approached slowly, careful not to startle the massive creature. They saw the warmth in its eyes, the slow rise and fall of its breath, and the way it allowed the child to move freely. Engineers whispered to each other, trying to measure and record the dragon's energy. But nothing they did could capture the truth. No instrument could gauge the depth of trust, the power of courage, or the force of innocence. All they could do was watch. Elia looked up at the dragon and smiled softly. "You don't have to hurt anyone," she said in her small, clear voice. "We can be friends." The dragon's hum deepened, vibrating with recognition. It had heard this sentiment before long ago, but never so simply, so purely, and never from one so tiny, so human. It remembered what it had once been before the galaxy had turned it into a weapon, before fear had claimed centuries of its life. The alien commanders on distant ships struggled to understand. It obeys the child, one said, voice trembling. It listens to her. Another shook his head. No species has ever controlled it. No mind, no machine, nothing. How can this human do it? They tried to fire to force the dragon's will, but their weapons fizzled. Energy dispersed harmlessly in the empty void. The dragon had chosen its own path, and that path included humans not as prey, not as threats, but as something worth protecting. Inside the ship, Elias' parents held their breath. They had been terrified, knowing the dragon's legend. But now they understood. Their child, small and unarmed, had not only survived the impossible, she had changed it. The dragon, once a destroyer of worlds, now seemed ready to guard them instead. The humans were not weak. They were powerful in ways that no fleet, no empire, no weapon could measure. The dragon shifted slightly, large wings folding back into its massive body, scales reflecting the soft light of the corridor. It exhaled, a warm, vibrating breath that filled the space with calm. Elia giggled softly, reaching up to touch one of its ridged scales. The dragon lowered its head further, allowing her small fingers to trace the patterns. There was no fire, no threat, only warmth and presence. The deadliest creature in the universe had paused, and it was alive in a new way, alive to trust, alive to connection, alive to humanity. Alien ships began to retreat slowly. Their commanders understood, finally, that humans were different. Not because they were physically strong or because they had powerful weapons, but because they had something older and rarer: courage, empathy, and the ability to reach beyond fear. The galaxy had long relied on machines, armies, and strategy to conquer. But humans relied on trust, small gestures, and the will to act when all else seemed impossible. The dragon had recognized that truth, and now it stood with humans, not against them. Elias' parents finally reached her side. They hugged her tightly, feeling both relief and pride. Their child had changed the impossible into reality. She had shown the dragon a simple truth: violence was not the only way to survive. Compassion could be stronger than fire. Bravery could overcome centuries of fear. And humanity, small and fragile in appearance, could shift the course of the universe with a single act. The dragon lowered its head fully, resting near the ship's floor, its golden eyes still locked on Elia. Its hum filled the corridors, a steady rhythm that made humans feel safe rather than afraid. For the first time, it had chosen to be more than a destroyer. It had chosen to protect. It had chosen to honor the smallest life that had touched its massive heart. Elia smiled, unaware of the legend she had become. She did not know that her actions would be recorded across galaxies, that alien fleets would speak of her bravery for generations, or that the deadliest dragon in the universe had changed its purpose because of her. All she knew was that she had made a friend, and that her courage had mattered. The humans aboard the ship realized something profound. Their lives, small and fragile as they were, could matter in ways the galaxy had forgotten. They did not need enormous fleets or superweapons to make a difference. A single human life, brave and kind, could influence beings that had terrified the universe for centuries. Courage and trust were their quiet power, hidden beneath weakness and fragility. Outside, the dragon lifted its massive head slightly, gazing at the stars. It was a silent guardian now, not a destroyer. It would follow humans when needed, protect them in secret, and remind the galaxy that strength was not always measured in fire or destruction. The alien fleets observed in awe, finally understanding that humans could survive, not because they were strongest, but because they had something stronger than fear: the ability to connect, to trust, and to inspire courage in even the deadliest beings. Elia stepped back from the dragon, holding her hands to her chest. She looked at the humans around her and the alien ships beyond, but her attention remained on the massive creature before her. Its hum was calm, steady, alive. It had been reminded of guardianship, and humans had been given a protector. The universe had shifted quietly, without war, without fire, without chaos. The dragon rumbled softly, almost like a wordless promise. Elia smiled, small and unafraid. The galaxy, full of fear and power, now understood something new. Humans were extraordinary. Their quiet courage, their trust, and their compassion could touch the heart of history itself. And sometimes, the smallest life form could wield the greatest power in the universe. The corridor was silent except for the dragon's hum and the child's gentle breath. Life, trust, and courage had triumphed without a single weapon fired. The deadliest creature in the universe had chosen humans, not as prey but as allies. Humanity had survived. Humanity had inspired. Humanity had won, quietly, bravely, and impossibly. Elia looked up into the dragon's golden eye one last time and whispered softly, "We will be okay." The dragon's massive head lowered slightly, almost as if nodding. Outside, the stars glimmered in quiet approval. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. The quiet power of humanity could move even the impossible. And somewhere deep in space, observers recorded what could not be measured, understood, or predicted. Humans had touched the heart of the universe, and the deadliest dragon in existence had remembered how to care. In that moment, the galaxy shifted forever. Humanity had found its quiet power, and it would never be forgotten.